Chapter 18, Open Economy Macroeconomics, Basic Concepts. In this chapter, these are the questions we intend to answer. How are international flows of goods and assets related? What is the difference between the real and nominal exchange rate? What is the purchasing power parity and how does it explain nominal exchange rates? By way of introduction, trade can make everyone better off. One of the 10 principles. This chapter introduces basic concepts of international macroeconomics. The trade balance or trade deficit and trade surpluses, international flows of assets, and exchange rates. Ask the experts, trade balance and trade negotiations. An important reason why many workers in Michigan and Ohio have lost jobs in recent years is because U.S. presidential administrations over the past 30 years have not been tough enough in the trade negotiations. What do economists say? 87% disagree, 10% are uncertain, 3% agree. International flows of goods and capital. How do we define closed economy? An economy that does not interact with other economies in the world. How do we define open economy? An economy that interacts freely with other economies around the world, buys and sells goods and services in world product markets, buys and sells capital assets such as stocks and bonds in world financial markets. Let's look at the flow of goods. Start with defining exports. Exports are goods and services that are produced domestically and sold abroad. Imports are goods and services that are produced abroad and sold domestically. Net exports, or NX, or trade balance, is equal to the value of exports minus value of imports. Active Learning 1, variables that affect net exports. What do you think would happen to U.S. net exports if, number A, Canada experiences a recession, that is falling incomes and rising unemployment? Number B, U.S. consumers decide to be patriotic and buy more products made in the USA? Number C, prices of goods produced in Mexico rise faster than prices of goods produced in the US? Answer A and B. A, Canada experiences a recession or falling incomes and rising unemployment. US net exports would fall due to a fall in Canadian consumers' purchase of US exports. Number B, US consumers decide to be patriotic and buy more products made in the USA. The answer, US net exports would rise due to a fall in imports. Answer to C. Prices of goods produced in Mexico rise faster than prices of goods produced in the US. This makes US goods more attractive relative to Mexico's goods. Exports to Mexico would increase, imports from Mexico would decrease, so US net exports would increase. Factors that influence net exports. The factors that might influence a country's exports, imports, and net exports would include consumers' tastes for foreign and domestic goods, prices of goods at home and abroad, exchange rates at which foreign currency trades for domestic currency, incomes of consumers at home and abroad, transportation costs, government policies. Trade surpluses or deficit. Trade surplus is when net export is positive, that is, exports are greater than imports. The country sells more goods and services abroad than it buys from other countries. Trade deficit is when net export is negative. Imports are greater than exports. The country sells fewer goods and services abroad than it buys from other countries. Balanced trade. Export is equal to imports. The US economy is increasing openness. As we can see, United States is becoming more and more intertwined with world trade. From 1960, when exports and imports were less than 5%, to this time, 2015-16, when imports and export is a little over 16%. The flow of financial resources. Net capital outflow, or NCO. Another name, net foreign investment. Purchase of foreign assets by domestic residents. Foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment, minus the purchase of domestic assets by foreigners. Net capital outflow, or NCO. NCO measures the imbalance in a country's trade in assets. When NCO is positive, net capital outflow, domestic purchases of foreign assets exceeds foreign purchases of domestic assets. When NCO is negative or less than zero, capital inflow, foreign purchases of domestic assets exceed domestic purchases of foreign assets. Variables that influence NCO. Real interest rates paid on foreign assets, real interest rates paid on domestic assets, perceived economic and political risks of holding foreign assets, government policies affecting foreign ownership of domestic assets. Equality of net exports and NCO. An accounting identity, NCO is equal to NX. Every transaction that affects NX also affects NCO by the same amount, and vice versa. When a foreigner purchases a good from the US exports and net exports increase. The foreigner pays with currency or assets, so US acquires some foreign assets, causing NCO to rise. When a US citizen buys foreign goods, US imports rise and net exports fall. The US buyer pays with US dollars or assets, so the other country acquires US assets, causing US NCO to fall. Example 1, exporting to Germany. Kiara is a web designer living in Illinois. She creates and sells a website to Gabriel, who is living in Germany. Gabriel pays Kiara 5,000 euros for the website. What is the effect on the US net exports and net capital flows if, number A, Kiara keeps the 5,000 euros at home? Number B, Kiara buys 5,000 euros worth of stocks in a German company. Number C, Kiara spends the 5,000 euros on shoes made in Germany. And number D, Kiara exchanges the 5,000 euros into US dollars. Solution, exporting to Germany. Kiara from US sells a website to Gabriel in Germany for 5,000 euros. Net export, which is calculated as exports minus imports, NCO, which is purchases of foreign assets by domestic residents minus purchases of domestic assets by by foreigners. The website sold to Gabriel is an export from the US, so US exports and net exports increase. Solutions A and B. US exports and net exports increase. A. Chiara keeps 5,000 euros at home. And B. Chiara buys euros worth of stocks in German company. Number A. Chiara, a domestic resident, acquires a foreign asset, 5,000 euros from Germany, so US NCO increases. Number B. Chiara, a domestic resident, acquired a foreign asset, 5,000 euros worth of stocks in a German company, so US NCO increases. Answers C and D. C. Chiara spends 5,000 euros on German shoes. Chiara purchases of shoes made in Germany is an import for the U.S. overall. For the U.S., overall exports increase by 5,000 euros. Website sales to Germany and imports increase by 5,000 euros. Shoes bought from Germany. So U.S. net exports do not change. NCO do not change. Number D, Chiara exchanges the 5,000 euros into US dollars. Now, the bank has to use the 5,000 euros, keep in the vault, or purchase German assets, or sell the euros to an American that wants to purchase a good or a service for euros. The change in net exports is matched by the change in NCO. Example 2, importing from China. Amazon, United States, purchases $10 million worth of goods from China to sell to the American customers. What is the effect on the US net exports and net capital outflows if, number A, China buys $10 million worth of US government bonds? Number B, China buys $10 million worth of goods from US. And number C, China buys $10 million worth of stocks in US companies. Example 2 solutions. Importing from China. The 10 million worth of goods bought from China are imports for the United States. Imports increase net exports. Imports increase and net exports decrease. What about A and C? China buys $10 million worth of US government bonds or stocks in US companies. Purchase of domestic assets by foreigners increase, so US NCO decreases. What about number B? China buys 10 million worth of goods from US. US imports increase, Amazon buys goods from China, and US exports increase, US sells goods to China. Net exports do not change, NCO do not change. Trade surplus and NCO. A country running a trade surplus, that is net exports positive or greater than zero, selling more goods and services to foreigners than it is buying from them. Use the foreign currency it receives from the net sales of goods and services abroad to buy foreign assets. Capital is flowing out of the country, and therefore NCO is positive or greater than zero. Trade deficit and NCO. A country is running a trade deficit. NCO is negative, buying more goods and services from foreigners than it is selling to them, financing the net purchase of these goods and services in world markets by selling assets abroad. Capital is flowing into the country, and therefore NCO is negative or less than zero. Savings and investment. Open economy. Y equals C plus I plus G plus NX. National savings, S is equal to Y minus C minus G. So Y minus C minus G is equal to I plus NX. So S is equal to I plus NX. NX is equal to NCO. So S is equal to I plus NCO. That is, saving is equal to domestic investment plus net capital outflow. International flows of goods and capital. Trade surpluses. Trade surplus result when export is greater than imports. Net exports is positive. Y is greater than domestic spending, which is C plus I plus G. S is greater than I, and NCO is positive. Trade deficit. Trade deficit results when export is less than imports and net export is negative. Y is less than domestic spending, which is C plus I plus G. S is less than I, and NCO is negative. Ask the experts. Trade balance and trade negotiations. A typical country can increase its citizens' welfare by enacting policies that would increase its trade surplus or decrease its trade deficit. What do economists say? 66% disagree, 28% are uncertain, and 6% agree. Case study. Is the US trade deficit a national problem? Before 1980, S and I were close, small net capital outflow between -1 and +1% of GDP. After 1980, S often falling below I, sizable trade deficits, substantial inflow of capital was the result. NCO is often a large negative number. Unbalanced fiscal policy, 1980 to 1987. Flow of capital into the US declines due to a fall in national savings. An investment boom, 1991 to 2000. There was an increase, and there was increased flow of capital. S and I increased. Government budget surplus was the result. Economic downturn and recovery, 2000 to 2018. 2000 to 2009, savings and investment fell. Investment, tough economic times made capital accumulation less profitable. Saving, government began running extraordinarily large budget deficit. 2009 to 2018, as the economy recovered, saving and investment increased by about 3 percentage points. Trade deficit. By a fall in saving, 1980s, the nation is putting away less of its income to provide for its future. Better to have foreign invest in the US economy than no one at all. Trade deficit by an investment boom 1990s. Economy is borrowing from abroad to finance the purchase of new capital goods. For a lower return on investment, debt will look less desirable. US saving investment and NCO between 1950 to 2019. Case study. Is the US trade deficit a problem? An extra capital stock from the 1990s investment boom may well yield large returns. The fall in saving of the US of the 80s and 2000s, while not desirable, at least did not depress domestic investment, since firms could borrow from abroad. A country, like a person, can go into debt for good reasons or bad ones. A trade deficit is not necessarily a problem, but might be a symptom of a problem. Nominal exchange rate. Nominal exchange rate is the rate at which one country's currency trades for another. We express all exchange rates as foreign currency per unit of domestic currency. Some exchange rates as of 1st October 2019 per US dollar, Canadian dollar was 1.32, euro was 0.91, Japanese yen was 107.7, Mexican peso was 19.82. Prices of international transactions. Appreciation or strengthening, an increase in the value of a currency as measured by the amount of foreign currency it can purchase. Depreciation or weakening is a decrease in the value of a currency as measured by the amount of foreign currency it can buy. Example 3. Appreciation or depreciation. What is the exchange rate? Did the US dollar appreciate or depreciate? A. Last year, Khalid exchanged $1 for 100 Japanese yen, but this year he exchanged $1 for 105 Japanese yen. Number B. Last year, Amira exchanged $1 for 25 Mexican pesos, but this year she exchanged $1 for 20 Mexican pesos. Solutions. A. Last year's exchange rate was equal to 100 yen per dollar. This year's exchange rate is equal to 105 yen per dollar. US dollar appreciation, that is $1, now can buy more yens than last year. Yen has depreciated. Last year's exchange rate was equal to 25 pesos per dollar. This year's exchange rate was 20 pesos per dollar. US dollar depreciation, that is $1 now can buy fewer pesos than last year. Peso has appreciated. Real exchange rate. Real exchange rate, the rate at which the goods and services of one country trade for the goods and services of another. Real exchange rate is equal to lowercase e times uppercase P over P star, where uppercase P is the domestic price, P star is foreign price in foreign currency, lowercase e is nominal exchange rate, foreign currency per unit of domestic currency. Example 4, calculating real exchange rate. A Big Mac costs $4 in the US, 380 yen in Japan. The exchange rate is 110 yen per dollar. Compute the real exchange rate. Lowercase e times p is equal to price in yen of a US Big Mac or equals 110 yen per dollar times $4 per Big Mac, which is equal to 440 yen per US Big Mac. Real exchange rate equals to lowercase e times uppercase P over uppercase P star, which is equal to 440 yen per US Big Mac over 380 yen per Japanese Big Mac, which is equal to 1.16 Japanese Big Mac per US Big Mac. Active Learning 2. Compute a real exchange rate. The exchange rate is E equals 20 pesos per dollar. The price of a tall Starbucks latte is P is equal to $3 in US and P star is equal to 40 pesos in Mexico. What is the price of US latte measured in pesos? Number A. Number B, calculate the real exchange rate measured as Mexican lattes per US latte. Answers. When E is 20 pesos, E is 20 pesos per dollar, P is $3 in US, and P star is 40 pesos in Mexico, what is the price of a US latte measured in pesos? That is E times P, that is 20 pesos per dollar, times $3 per US latte is equal to 60 pesos per US latte. Number B, calculate the real exchange rate measured as Mexican lattes per US latte. E times P over P star equals 60 pesos per US latte over 40 pesos per US latte, which is equal to 1.5 Mexican lattes per US latte. For the economy as a whole, real exchange rate, which is calculated as E times P into bracket over P star, is equal to price of domestic basket of goods relative to price of foreign basket of goods. P is US price level. For example, consumer price index measures the price of a basket of goods. P star is equal to foreign price level. If US real exchange rate appreciates, US goods become more expensive relative to foreign goods. Purchasing power parity. A theory of exchange rate whereby a unit of any given currency should be able to buy the same quantity of goods in any country, in all countries. It is based on the law of one price. That is, a good should sell for the same price in all locations. How do we define arbitrage? With arbitrage, you will take advantage of price differences for the same item in different markets. Example 5. The law of one price. If coffee beans sell for $4 per pound in Seattle and $5 per pound in Boston, and coffee beans can be costlessly transported, how will the two markets reach equilibrium? Opportunity for arbitrage exists, making a quick profit by buying coffee in Seattle and selling it in Boston. Seattle, there's an increase in demand. The increase in demand drives up prices. In Boston, increase in supply drives the price down. And this continues until the two prices are equal. The PPP, a currency must have the same purchasing power in all countries. A US dollar must buy the same quantity of goods in the United States and Japan, and a Japanese yen must buy the same quantity of goods in Japan and the United States. A unit of a currency must have the same real value in every country. Example 6, applying PPP. Using the theory of purchasing power parity, find the exchange rate if a bushel of apples sells for 30 US dollars in the US and 300 krona in Sweden. PPP, a dollar buys the same quantity of goods in the United States, that is, prices in US, as in Sweden, prices in krona. The number of krona per dollar must reflect the prices of goods in the US and Sweden. Nominal exchange rate is equal to 300 krona over $30, which is equal to 10 krona per dollar. Implications of PPP. If purchasing power of the dollar is always the same at home and abroad, then the real exchange rate cannot change. The theory of purchasing power parity, E, is equal to P star over P. Nominal exchange rate between the currencies of two countries must reflect the price level in those countries. So uppercase P is the domestic price level, uppercase P star is the foreign price level, and lowercase e is the exchange rate, foreign currency per US dollar. Implications. Nominal exchange rates change when price levels change. When a central bank in any country increases the money supply and causes the price level to rise, it also causes that country's currency to depreciate relative to other currencies in the world. Limitations of PPP. Theory of purchasing power parity does not always hold in practice. 1. Many goods are not easily traded. Price differences on such goods cannot be arbitraged away. Number 2. Even tradable goods are not always perfect substitutes when they are produced in different countries. Price differences reflect taste differences. Purchasing power parity is not a perfect theory of exchange rate determination. Real exchange rates fluctuate over time. Large and persistent movements in nominal exchange rates typically reflect changes in price levels at home and abroad. Hyperinflation in Germany in 1921 to 1924. Exchange rate declined and price level and money supply increased. Active Learning 3 Chapter Review Questions. A. Which of the following statements about a country with a trade deficit is not true? Export is less than import. Net capital outflow is negative. Investment is less than savings. Y is less than C plus I plus G. Number B. A Ford Escape SUV sells for $24,000 in the US and 720,000 rubles in Russia. If purchasing power parity holds, what is the nominal exchange rate? In rubles per dollar. Answer. Which of the following statements about a country with a trade deficit is not true? Export is less than import. Net capital outflow is negative. Investment is less than savings. Y is less than C plus I plus G. A trade deficit means net export is less than zero or negative. That means export is less than imports. Y is less than domestic spending, C plus I plus G, and NCO is negative. Since NX is is equal to S plus minus I, a trade deficit implies I is greater than S. So the answer is a C. Answers to B. A Ford Escape SUV sells for $24,000 in the United States and 720,000 rubles in Russia. If purchasing power parity holds, what is the nominal exchange rate in rubles per dollar? P star is 720,000 rubles. P is $24,000. E is P star over P, which is 720,000 over 24,000 is equal to 30 rubles per dollar. Think pair share. You are watching a national news broadcast with your parents. The news anchor explains that the exchange rate for dollar just hit its lowest value in a decade. The on the spot report shifts to a spokesman for Caterpillar, a heavy equipment manufacturer. The spokesman reports that sales of its earth moving equipment have hit an all time high, and so has the value of its stock. Your parents are shocked by the report's positive view of the low value of the dollar. They just cancelled their European vacation because of the dollar's low value. Number A. Why do Caterpillar and your parents have different opinions about the value of the US dollar? Number B. Caterpillar imports many parts and raw materials for their manufacturing processes, and they sell many finished products abroad. Since they are happy about a low dollar, what must be true about the proportions of their imports and exports? Number C. If someone argues that a strong dollar is good for America because Americans are able to exchange some of their GDP for a great amount of foreign GDP, is it true that a strong dollar is good for every American? Why or why not? Think. Chapter in a nutshell. Net exports. Net exports are exports minus imports. Net capital outflow is the acquisition of foreign assets by domestic residents minus the acquisition of domestic assets by foreigners. An economy's net capital outflow always equals its net exports. An economy's savings can be used either to finance investment at home or to buy assets abroad. Thus, national saving equals domestic investment plus net capital outflow. The nominal exchange rate is the relative price of the currency of two currencies, of two countries. The real exchange rate is the relative price of the goods and services of two countries. When the nominal exchange rate changes so that each dollar buys more foreign currency, the dollar is said to appreciate or strengthen. When the nominal exchange rate changes so that each dollar buys less foreign currency, the dollar is said to depreciate or weaken. According to the theory of purchasing power parity, a dollar or a unit of any other currency should be able to buy the same quantity of goods in all countries. This theory implies that the nominal exchange rate between the currencies of two countries should reflect the price levels in those countries. As a result, countries with relatively high inflation should have depreciating currencies, and countries with relatively low inflation should have appreciating currencies.